The time each one of us have to live our lives is finite. Youth sometimes gives the illusion that we will be around for a very, very long time, that in some days we imagine living forever. But our time, like attention and energy, is not limitless. Even our ability to focus on one task depletes a reserve that runs out every so often. Hi, this is the Bangon Nata podcast where we talk about work and life, and I am Greg de la Cruz. Today, we will make the case for two types of workers: those willing to sacrifice the finite amount of time they have in their lives for a massive payday, and those who seek the perfect balance of okay pay and a life well lived. The average monthly salary for a worker in the Philippines is 15,200 pesos a month. And this was according to a 2020 article by The Inquirer, citing a survey done by Picodi.com. And that figure, 15,200 pesos a month, or 300 US dollars a month, was ranked 95th among over 100 countries surveyed. And if you trust government agencies more than you do privately funded think tanks, the 2017 report by the Philippine Statistics Authority, PSA, on the average daily basic pay of wage and salary workers revealed that it was 416 pesos per day, or 10,000 pesos per month, which is actually worse. Whether it's really 15,200 or 10,000 pesos a month, knowing these two figures, I am not surprised at all why the Filipinos' aspiration for better pay continues. Why do we allow ourselves to be peeled off from our families, launching ourselves into the air and landing on a different country or continent, into a place that doesn't value our language, culture, beliefs, and principles as much as our home does? Or if not that route, work an awful job where we get screamed at by people of Western descent and accents, disrupt our sleep cycles forever, abuse our own health, and all of these in the name of better pay. The standard career narrative many seem to have accepted is that you work your way up, starting from an entry-level job that pays very little, and you eventually get promoted within your organization or seek a higher paying position elsewhere. You keep rising through the ranks, apply here and there, get a larger and larger salary, and pay more taxes, and that goes on for as much as luck and opportunity would present itself to you, and you finally retire. Now, some would seek out higher salaries early on in order to get a better chance to retire at a younger age. And the standard career path is more straightforward in other professions. For example, in medicine, where you start out as an unpaid intern, spend 3 to 5 years for residency, sometimes as much as 7 years. And then you rise up to become an attending doctor, getting paid well over 6 figures. Career progression varies across different industries and also because of personal preference. But the common pattern is this: the worker will continually seek out better pay for as long as his or her career lifespan will last. And there's nothing wrong with that. If anything, we're just trying to stave off inflation. The price of goods and services will continue to increase, as in a healthy economy it should, but at a rate that doesn't devalue our money too fast. But we will come to a discussion later in this episode of something obvious but isn't talked about enough, and that's the reality that not all people have access to many high-paying jobs. And I'm not just talking about the financial side. For example, if you want to become a lawyer working for a top-tier firm, you of course need to be able to pay for tuition or qualify for a scholarship. And in the United States, many hopefuls incur as much as $200,000 in student loans just to finish medicine. The non-financial side of it falls in the realm of greedy work, which we will talk more about a bit later. Let's now make the case for better schedules and why people tend to favor a better work schedule over getting more lucrative pay. On this end, I'd like to share from experience. My first full-time job was not your regular 8 to 5 Mondays through Fridays. It was Mondays through Saturdays, which is pretty common in the Philippines and in most Asian countries. And it was 12 hours a day. And so the first work schedule that I was ever acquainted with was a 72-hour work week. And what made things worse for me personally was that I lived 45 minutes to an hour of commute from my place of work. And with that, as much as 14 of my waking hours were devoted to work. But looking back, why should I even complain? Security guards in the Philippines have notoriously awful schedules with the horrific schedule of 777. They work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week, from Mondays through Sundays, or Mondays to Mondays when you think about it. What's worse, they sometimes are forced to do double shifts or a full 24 hours of work. The healthcare industry is also notorious for awful schedules, with residents working 80-hour weeks, sometimes 36 straight hours, and especially during COVID, where there weren't that many nurses available because of either some staff getting COVID or others scared to go to work. And hospital administrators are not incentivized to put adequate staffing, by the way, because it cuts through the bottom line, but that's a topic for another episode. So as you can imagine, I may have had an entry-level job with entry-level pay with an awful schedule, but working long hours while not being paid well is very common from where I come from, and is also probably the case for other countries. However, it's also quite common to improve both your working hours and your salary at the same time. Thankfully and fortunately for me, I've never had to go back to that 72-hour work week ever again. After that, I took a part-time job while I took a little time off to study, and I eventually landed some jobs with the regular 8 to 5 Monday to Friday work days. And as I went on with my career, the 8-hour workday became more malleable and flexible for me. Even before the pandemic, before hybrid work and flexible hours, mixing remote work and office work together, I had already worked for a company that was pretty hands-off in terms of work schedules. Sure, they still needed our time records, but we were free to manage our 40-hour work weeks depending on business need and for personal needs as well. I just needed to make sure I showed up to meetings and deliver my needed results. So props to that company which made hybrid work a thing way before it became the norm during the pandemic. And now I've found myself in a similar situation. Flexible hours, flexible work locations, and the pay is not so bad either. But could I have gotten jobs with way better salary if only I was willing to work a demanding schedule? Let's do a quick search on JobStreet to find out. I'm a mechanical engineer by background, and you usually find people like me in processing plants, manufacturing, energy production, sometimes automotive, mostly industrial jobs. And a quick search on JobStreet reveals several jobs in these industrial plants, and the first posting I come across is Senior Production Supervisor for a refining plant. And to no surprise, I find that it pays more than twice as much as my current job. Browsing through the qualifications, I pretty much checked most of the boxes. However, the most important bullet point for me to pay my attention to is this last line on the required skills list for the job. And I'm pretty sure it was their intention to put this at the very bottom. Must have strong management and planning skills and a competent leader of a 24-hour manufacturing operation. Let that sink in for a second. 24 hours. Are you sure you'll be able to get your mind off work for any moment of the day? Sure, you're probably paid some time off and vacations, but when you're away sipping mimosas at a white sand beach resort somewhere and you suddenly get a text from one of your subordinates or colleagues, and he says that a crucial piece of equipment went down, or the factory is experiencing some serious downtime, what are you going to do? More importantly, what are you going to think or feel? How's your mimosa going to taste now? Some industries definitely have it better than others, and I've deliberately distanced myself away from professions that will consume my waking life with work. And I guess it's appropriate at this point of the episode to say out loud the slogan of this podcast. Work should stop being the reason we get up in the morning. The pursuit for a better working schedule is quite easy to understand, especially because I've been living it. We all have different priorities in life. We want to spend time with the people we care about. We perhaps want to pursue some passions and hobbies, maybe some travel, or we have some heavy family obligations, whether it's childcare or elderly care. Or maybe we want to go back to school. And for some hopeless ones like me, maybe start a podcast which talks about work. We are near the end of this episode, and before we get to the topic of greedy work, a subject I wrote about on the HubPages platform, an article which the editors decided to feature on the website Tough Nickel, let me talk about the very rare phenomenon of great pay plus a great schedule. Isn't this where we all want to end up? I think this is also a very common occurrence. The ability to get more than enough money to support our lifestyle, and even for members of our family, having enough savings to spend on whatever, to be completely secure in case of any health or domestic crisis, and all of this while not having to work so much. High-paid lawyers working for brand-name firms, for example, start working ungodly hours, but they get paid very, very well. Same with accountants, same with management consultants, those non-tech overseas jobs that get paid six figures easily, usually Cornell or Wharton graduates. The great thing about them is that there comes a point when they get tired of the brutal work weeks and they wind down and decide to pursue a consulting career or private practice. And because of the work experience and the expertise that they've gained, they usually succeed in transitioning to a more well-paced work style. One where they're the boss and they decide their schedules. And eventually, for those who establish a good reputation, they'll even exceed what they used to make during their years as a corporate soldier. They're also more likely to invest in stocks, real estate, probably some crypto in this day and age, and earn passive income because they have more money to set aside. A life where they determine their own work schedules, in addition to getting paid as much as they want, will arrive. They are the unicorns among the working class, these consultants. And since they're unicorns, there's not really that many of them. They're the types to publish books and earn income from that as well. And you'll probably be able to hear from them in some talk show, symposium, or a TED Talk somewhere. Now let's end this podcast episode by talking about greedy work. In my article, I cited the Forbes website which said that greedy work includes those professions that demand long and unpredictable hours from those who wish to succeed in them. And I also used a Harvard Business Review description which said that greedy jobs are those high salary jobs with long inflexible hours that exacerbate the gender pay gap. That last point especially is where I want to hone in, the gender pay gap. There's an inequality that exists in our society when it comes to the accessibility of high-paying jobs. Unfortunately, that inequality has made itself apparent in the form of the gender pay gap. Why is there a gender pay gap in the first place? Is it as simple as saying that men who work a certain job will get paid more than a woman would who works that same exact job? I used to believe that the gender pay gap was as simple as that, but it's not. Greedy jobs are unfair because only a few types of people seem to be able to work them. Say you're a young accountant fresh off graduation. In order to fit in and get noticed inside a cutthroat accounting firm, you're expected to work early in the morning until late at night, and if you get stuck in the office when it's dark, you're probably going to end up sleeping there and restart the very next day. Same scenario for a junior legal associate at a prominent law firm, or an entry-level programmer at a startup, and a doctor in the first few years of residency. But what is it that makes these examples sadder, aside from the fact that the hours are bad? you probably didn't imagine that a single mother or even a married woman with kids could ever work those jobs that I just mentioned. On my list of 7 signs of greedy work, one symptom of greedy work was that in your organization, there could be disproportionately more men in higher positions. And like I said, this circumstance isn't simply gender-based bias in the workplace. It could also be that the jobs in your organization are greedy in the sense that only those willing to forego family time or sacrifice time off are able to sustain their career and prosper. And more often than not, these are men who, because of societal norms, are not expected to take care of the kids or keep the house clean, and are therefore always available to do more work. If you're interested about what I had to say about greedy work, check out my profile on HubPages and Tough Nickel, and I also have some articles featured on soapboxy.com and letterpile.com. To close here, please allow me to thank you for listening to another episode of the Bangon Nata podcast. It is my firm belief that we need to wake up or open our eyes to these pressing issues about work. Slowly but surely, the world is starting to change for the better. More and more countries are adopting fewer workdays, and with remote work becoming mainstream, there are movements to improve working hours even here in the Philippines. Join me once again in future episodes where we will talk about different facets of work and life. Unlike this episode, I'll have some willing guests over to share their own experience and learnings. And it's always good to hear from someone outside of my bubble. Thank you so much for listening, and tune in to the next episode. Until next time.